here. We're here every Monday at 8 p.m. My name is Brother Mark. I'm a member of the People-Pueblo Party, and this is the People's TV show that we have every Monday at 8 p.m. And today's topic is going to be about the presidential election. And of course, the People's TV is a program directed and organized by the People-Pueblo Party. And what we say is that we believe in common sense politics for the people, the planet, and the animals. There are multiple crises going on. There's ecological crisis. There's a crisis with our food supply. There's a crisis with animal extinction. There's a crisis with the economics. And this is a reflection of the general crisis of capitalism in the world and also of the American empire. Throughout history, we've seen that when empires start to fall apart, they start to destroy and tear up everything around them and really devour its own people. And so we can see that very clearly. And what pushed this crisis even further was, of course, COVID-19 and the really horrible job that the elites, the people who run this country and their politicians have done, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to die and millions of people to get infected. And now we're in a third wave. Whereas other countries have, like Vietnam, for example, have controlled the virus. Vietnam, a country of 10 million people with 10 billion people. No, it's 10 million, yes, because the United States has 300 million. Vietnam has 10 million people with millions of people, yet they're able to control the pandemic and stop its spread and rebuild and re-energize their economy and their politics, whereas the U.S. has not been able to do that. From the beginning, Trump was talking about it's a hoax. And then Anthony Fauci said, don't wear masks. And then he said, wear masks. So really here in this country, because the whole government is structured to cater to the rich, it has allowed the infrastructure in this country to deteriorate to the point where regular people, poor and working people, can't get the help that they need. But the rich always get what they need. They get bailouts, they get money, the industrial, the war machine, the military industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, they always get money. There's never a question of, is there enough money for them? There's always enough money for them. They always get what they want, but then regular people don't. And so today we're going to have a discussion. We have a brother on named Howie Hawkins. He's running for president as the Green Party candidate. And we hope to be able to speak to him. Hopefully we won't have too many tech issues. But very quickly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the two major party candidates, the Democrats and Republicans. Not a long time, but just enough to say that in New York State and California State, the Democratic Party controls it to the point where they're going to give the electoral votes to Joe Biden. We already know that. Texas has a lot of electoral votes, and they're going to give their electoral votes to Trump. So they already, there's about, I would say, out of the 50 states, there's about 44, 43 states where the race is already decided. And because you know, of course you know, that people in the United States don't directly vote for the president. They vote for a group of people called electors. And then those electors are the ones who choose the president. Now, this electoral college was set up at the beginning of this country because the rich people, the landowners and the merchants, they didn't trust the regular people. They had just come out of the American Revolution and didn't trust the people. So they didn't allow, they set up a system that wouldn't allow people to directly vote for president. You have to vote for electors. And then these electors would then choose the president. And so the electors are the ones really who choose the president. And they were set up, this electoral college was set up so that the electors don't have to follow the popular vote. They take an oath, but the way it was set up is that they don't have to vote the will of the people. And that was one of the systems that was set up in order so that the will of the people could be denied, and a president could be chosen who the elites, the rich people, wanted in power. And that's the system we still have today. It's called the Electoral College. And in fact, Hillary Clinton in 2016 won the popular vote, yet Trump was chosen as president because he had the majority, over 270 of the Electoral College votes. So that's what happened in 2016. Now, what I'm going to introduce real quick is a political cartoon. And here we're going to start with Joe Biden. And it says, of course, now I'm running against all those young guys. And it shows a picture, if you can see it on the screen, of Joe Biden with a 2020 button and the Biden record. And in the back is Joe Biden when he was younger. It says Anita Hill hearing. Anita Hill was a black woman who said that she was sexually abused by Clarence Thomas, who was trying to be the Supreme Court justice, and he got the nomination, he got the approval. And Joe Biden was one of the people who didn't respect Anita Hill, show her no kind of respect as a black woman, and in fact had her talk about the most embarrassing moments that she had to suffer from Clarence Thomas. And then it says mass incarceration. With mass incarceration, I'm just going to let you hear Joe Biden himself, because a lot of people, they haven't heard these things, and these things are out there. They're so obvious. All you have to do is a Google search and a YouTube search, and you'll be able to hear Joe Biden himself talking about all the horrible things that he has done, in particular to black people, but all poor and working people in this country. And it's really, really horrible. Also, in the middle of the civil rights movement, Joe Biden was against busing. He was against desegregation in our public schools. Joe Biden also was for the war in Iraq. So Joe Biden was willing to give plenty of money to the war in Iraq, yet he was also talking about cutting Social Security and Medicare. And so, Joe Biden is really a Trump with a different type of style. And so if people are expecting for Joe Biden to save us or to help us, they're very misguided. And I'm just going to play this short clip. I got like 4 of these on different topics, but I'm just going to play this one.
Just like when I first got in politics, even though I come from this background and ran on a law and order platform, I remember the liberals used to say, Biden is, quote, an iconoclast. That was what my newspaper called me, an iconoclast. Because how can he really be a progressive and want to lock these people up? I'm sure my friend from California gets hit with that all. How can you be a progressive and be so tough on crime? Well, I wasn't wedded to the notion. Every time Richard Nixon, when I was running in 1972, would say law and order, the Democratic mantra, the response was law and order with justice, whatever that meant. And I'd say lock the SOBs up.
So, I mean, you heard it right there from Joe Biden himself. People were saying you need to have law and order, you need to have safety in the community, but with justice. And what does he do? He mocks that. He mocked that. And so, the United States was one of the biggest prison populations in the world, especially amongst African Americans. That was brought on by Joe Biden. That was brought on by Joe Biden when he was a senator from Delaware. He and many racist people in this U.S. Senate with Ku Klux Klan background pushed for mass incarceration of black people and other people of color and poor and working people. And so when people expect Joe Biden to provide the hope and get us away from Trump, what they're doing is running into another Trump, but with a different style, right? So, and just so people don't get confused, I'm not endorsing Trump. I'm not supporting Trump. Trump is the original Trump, right? But what he has done is he has accelerated the work that Joe Biden and other Democrats have instituted in this country. And I got this political cartoon here on the right from my brother Angelo, and it says, "Aren't you glad I kept you from panicking? I don't get enough credit for that. I really don't. Also, you won't be safe in Joe Biden's America." And all you see is tombstones that say COVID, right? And so Trump is a racist. He's an explicit, open racist who, goes to Puerto Rico and throws paper towels at people instead of giving them the help and support they needed to reconstruct the island, to get over the hurricane and the earthquakes that rocked Puerto Rico. He also supports. In fact, you know what? Let me just play Trump and the clip, which a lot of you have already seen from the debate, from the presidential debate. I know I don't have to say a lot against Trump because most people already know about his antics and all the terrible things that he stands for and does. But I believe that hey, don't take my word for it. Listen to him. Listen to what he says. And this was
You have repeatedly criticized the
vice
president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Are you prepared to specifically do it?
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
What are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything I want to see.
Do it, sir.
Say it. You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a name.
White supremacists and right.
Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
You got it.
Not militia.
That's what it is tonight.
His FBI director said.
We're done, sir.
Everybody
tells you the truth is a bad idea.
Yeah. So, we're faced with two really horrible political parties with two really horrible candidates. And the United States Chamber of Commerce, which represents billion-dollar businesses, have spent millions and millions of dollars on supporting Republicans, getting Republicans in office, and having them control the government. And now that same Chamber of Commerce has switched and is putting millions and millions of dollars into the Democratic campaign so the Democrats can control the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And so right now, this political race between Trump from today and Biden from the past is a win-win situation for the billionaires. There is no winning for us. However, we have to really understand that a lot of our people in our communities can't stand Trump because he is so blatant and explicit about his racism and his hate. And so this race is going to be decided in about 6 or 7 states. Those are the 6 or 7 states because of the Electoral College that will pick the next president of the United States. And we're talking about Florida. We're talking about Pennsylvania. We're talking about Wisconsin. We're talking about Michigan. We're talking about Ohio. We're talking about North Carolina. And, people talk about Colorado, but Colorado has consistently voted Democratic. And so in the 44 other states where the outcome is already predicted, what I'm saying to people is that you have to vote third party. Voting for Joe Biden in New York State or California, which the Democrats already control, is really a wasted vote. We have to prepare our own political parties. We have to have an alternative to the chaos and the madness that the Republicans and Democrats have established and will continue to perpetuate. Now, if you hate Trump so much, if you think Trump is a demon and you have to vote against Trump, then where it matters is in those 6 states, in what they call the swing states. In New York and California, it does not matter. Your votes will be wasted if you vote for Biden. You should vote for an alternative third party so we could build a movement. That can really fight for the people. Because don't expect Joe Biden to fight for the people. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so thank you. That was a longer introduction than I normally do. And very quickly, I want to give thanks to our sponsor, the People's Health Project. They pay for the software that we're using tonight. They also pay for this laptop. And so I want to give them a shout out. And it's a project that came from members of the People-Pueblo Party. And so we're very grateful to them for all that they have done and all of their support. Also, now we're going to go into our main section here, which is Free Your Mind from Mental Slavery. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to introduce my co-host, Bill. And then we're going to introduce our main guest for this evening, Howie Hawkins, which it took him a while to get it together, but I can see him here. And I know we're going to have a really great conversation. And I also want to thank Robert Nisanoff, who's been posting on our chat. And we're going to read some of Robert's and other folks' comments and questions so we can have a good discussion. So I'm going to present now Bill, and I'm going to let Bill, say hello to everybody. And then we're going to get Howie Hawkins on here. So Bill, welcome. How you doing, brother? Can you hear me? Oh, let me unmute you. That might work. That might work if I unmute you. What you think?
Microphone check 1 2 1 2. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome. Good evening, everybody. Mark, you pretty much summed it up. I mean, people had their minds made up. I mean, you broke down the electoral, how we go about selecting presidents, why Trump was elected president, even though he didn't get the popular vote over Hillary. And I'm sitting down with my family. I thought she got to vote for the presidency. And I was tempted to do it this year because New York is always going to be carried by the Democratic Party blindly. But instead, I think that I'm going to do it as Mark suggested.
Yeah, Bill, you're picking up for some reason.
Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, let me sit up. Maybe it's my posture. Am I coming across clear now?
So.
If I was my posture,
much,
I had to get it from a school
better.
teacher, all right. He still teaches. I think this is a very important topic.
Yeah, Bill, we got a really bad signal on you.
I made a conscious decision not to vote. It wasn't a laziness that I didn't fly to the polls and voted. The choices that we had. But like I said, the Democratic Party is going to be carried in New York.
Yeah, Bill, it sounds horrible. Your audio is horrible, brother. So we're gonna have to get you a mic, bro. But so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna bring on Howie Hawkins now. And if we can't get your audio right, Bill, I want you to call my cell phone. And that way we'll have your image on the screen, but we'll get your voice from my cell phone. How does that sound? Okay. So thank you. So without further ado, I want to bring in Brother Howie Hawkins. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work this here. Just give me 1 second, trying to get it together. Here it is. Okay. Okay. So Howie Hawkins is the original Green New Dealer. Howie was the first candidate to run on a fully developed Green New Deal in 2010. A lot of people want to give AOC or Bernie credit for that, but that came out of the Green Party. The Green New Deal was something that came out of Howie Hawkins and the Green Party, combining an economic bill of rights to jobs, income, housing, healthcare, and education with 100% clean energy by 2030 in order to reconstruct the economy for economic justice and climate safety. He has run for governor of New York 3 times in 2010, 2014, and 2018. His 2014 run garnered 5% of the vote, the highest total for progressive independent in nearly a century. He is also one of the original Greens in the United States, having participated in the first national meeting to organize a U.S. Green Party in St. Paul, Minnesota in August 1984. In July, he was nominated to be the 2020 presidential candidate for the Green Party. So without further ado, let's get Brother Howie Hawkins on here. And we're going to try a new connection for Bill. And hopefully we can have everybody on. Okay. So here we are. Thank you so much, Brother Hawkins, for being here today. I hope I didn't ruin the intro too much, but I was trying to do multiple things here, trying to get Bill's mic right and trying to do justice by you. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. You did fine. I was trying to multitask too, and I'm not good at that. So congratulations on getting it done.
All right. All right. So I don't know if you caught the beginning where we talked about how, we have Trump running against and Joe Biden, Trump with a different style and a different kind of outward appearance and a different, rhetoric that includes a lot of lies. And so, we were also saying, and trying to explain to folks that the Electoral College is what chooses the presidents, not the voters directly. And so we were saying that this thing is going to be decided by like 6 states. And so in all the other states, voting for Joe Biden is really a wasted vote. What we need to do is vote for third parties so we could build up our alternatives so we don't get stuck in this same situation in 4 years. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think that's exactly right. We stand for a Green New Deal, Medicare for all. You mentioned the Economic Bill of Rights. We want to end these endless wars, stop deploying these new nuclear weapons that have kicked off a new nuclear arms race. And as the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists having their doomsday clock, the closest it's ever been to midnight. A whole lot of progressive positions. Joe Biden, like Donald Trump, is opposed to all of them. So if you're any kind of progressive and you vote for Joe Biden, I say you're getting lost in the sauce. Nobody knows that you stand for those positions. You voted for Joe Biden. And particularly in the states that they're not contested, like California, New York, or Wyoming on the other side, you're wasting your vote if you don't vote for what you want and you're a progressive. The more difficult question, the more controversial question is, what do you do in the so-called battleground states? And they've shifted. A lot of people are still running the 2016 election and think it's Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But Biden's been consistently ahead in those states by a comfortable margin since the spring. The states they moved to are states like North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Iowa. Those are the new battlegrounds. And because they're the new battlegrounds, if the vote is counted, Biden's going to win in a landslide. So my argument, even in those states, we want your vote. Now, I understand if people think Trump's just got to go. I mean, he is probably the most divisive, mean-spirited, racist scapegoater we've ever had in the White House, at least in modern times. And that is encouraging, you know, this riffraff to come out, the so-called militias, which are actually illegal. You can't have private armies in this country. It's illegal in every damn state. But even where the Democrats are in charge, they haven't dismantled them. You know, it says, you know, Second Amendment, people like to talk about that. It says a well-regulated militia. That means government-sponsored militia, not private militias. But they're still marginal. I mean, this is not Hitler's Germany, where 400,000 people were armed in the Nazi Party. There was a workers' movement to crush them. That's why the big capitalists got behind Hitler. We're in a very different circumstance. We got a reality TV star who's lost touch with reality in the presidency. He definitely should go, but I don't think it means fascism's on the horizon. And people who are saying we got to get Trump out at all costs, I think they're going to be appalled at what they see from the Biden administration. So for us, this is laying down markers on issues like the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, and so forth. And that's what we're going to be fighting for over the next period. And I think the honeymoon will be relatively short with Biden, and then it'll be our turn to take advantage of that, be ready to organize people. Can't hear you.
I know you know, I want to ask you something. You know Chris Hedges, Cornel West, and there's some other folks that are putting out, based on their research and their work, that as the American empire decays and declines, that it will be using repression more and more to keep people in check, right? I mean, and that a lot of what we see, even before COVID, there were already signs that the economy was starting to deteriorate because of the neoliberal structure of always giving billionaires money and not taking care of the people, not taking care of the infrastructure. I mean, how do you see that? Because in some ways it explains a lot. I mean, it raises a lot of questions, but in some ways it explains. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, the empire is doing no good for most of us. That's really about having a global military empire. It's about protecting the profits of US-based global banks and corporations in competition with other capitalist states, which all the big states are now: Russia, China, India, Iran, you name it. And so what we say is, let's dismantle that global military empire and use our wealth and our influence to be the world's humanitarian superpower. Instead of having combat troops in 14 conflicts right now, let's end the endless wars. Let's cut back on the military bloat for wars and coups abroad. We want a 75% cut in military spending and put that money to use protecting the people and the planet. We want to withdraw from the over 800 foreign military bases. We want to pledge no first use of nuclear weapons, and then go to the other nuclear powers and say, hey, we're no longer a threat, tensions are reduced. Let's have complete and mutual nuclear disarmament. Because those weapons should never be used, because once one of them flies, they all fly, and that's the end of us.
Yeah.
So we have a very different approach. And then as far as the economic policy goes, you're right. Neoliberalism, I like to call it trickle-down economics, but it doesn't trickle down. You give money to the rich, they're supposed to invest, new factories, new jobs, and so forth. But with working class people struggling to make ends meet, with wages stagnant for the last 45 years, with the cost of housing and healthcare going through the roof, same for college, people don't have the money to spend. So you give more money to the rich, they're not going to invest in a new factory because nobody will buy what comes out of that factory. So they spend that money buying back their stock in bonds, in commodities, in real estate. And they just rearrange the productive assets we got instead of creating new ones. And Trump and Biden, that's their policy. It's trickle-down economics. Trump has across-the-board tax cuts for the rich. Biden's cuts are more targeted. He's going to make it a little bit more progressive, but then he's going to give tax cuts and subsidies to try to get corporations to do what he wants.
Right.
But it's still that trickle-down approach, which doesn't work, doesn't trickle down to us. Our approach through our Green New Deal is to have the government directly employ people, providing goods and services we need, and for the government to make things through public enterprises. We did some of that in the New Deal. We really did it during World War II in that emergency. The federal government took over a quarter of manufacturing capacity of the country in order to turn industry on a dime into the arsenal of democracy to defeat the fascists.
Right.
We need to do nothing less now, both for climate recovery and for economic recovery. So that's our approach, and it's very different than the two corporate parties.
Yeah. Well, so I was reading one time that Obama was thinking of drawing more troops out of Afghanistan, and his defense secretary at the time dissuaded him from doing that, saying that the generals would all resign, right? And I know recently Trump was talking about withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, and I think his name is General Miley or something from the Joint Chiefs of Staff said that it was unwise to do that, and he didn't see that happening. So, I mean, what do you say about that kind of situation where these generals and the Joint Chiefs of Staff are basically calling the shots? I mean, do we have, as a civilian population, will we have enough power to control these war hawks and these people who support the military-industrial complex? Because it looks like Obama and Trump are being played by them. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, if the generals threatened to resign because Obama wanted to get out of Afghanistan, they should have resigned, and he should have appointed new generals. Seymour Hersh made a distinction years ago between the Rocks and the Crusaders among the officer corps. The Crusaders were the people that wanted to go on this holy war against Islam. But the Rocks were also longtime officers. Colin Powell was one of them. Remember what he said about going into Iraq. If you break it, you own it. Right. And when they went into Iraq the first time, it's like with overwhelming force. Those people, they aren't eager to go to war. They've been to wars. So there's people in the officer corps that would go along with the program of getting out of Afghanistan. As far as why it's wise or not, people say, well, it's the longest war. We've been there since 2001. No, we've been there since 1978. Brzezinski under Carter convinced Carter that we had to support these Islamic fundamentalists against the government of Afghanistan, which was a coup. It was a communist party that came to power under a coup. Then it split, and these young kids were killing each other. It was a mess, but there's no reason for us to get involved, but we did. And among the people we supported was Osama bin Laden. So we've been there participating in war there for 42 years. Now, Afghanistan's a very diverse country, different ethnic groups. You got the descendants of Genghis Khan, Asian people from Mongolia, they're the Hazaras. You got, very other Middle Eastern people. But for hundreds, even thousands of years, they've made accommodations with each other. And when foreigners get involved, it makes it harder for them to settle the difference politically. So I'm saying we should have an orderly withdrawal from Afghanistan and then lend what diplomatic influence we can for them to, help them come to agreements for peace. And we should offer aid instead of arms. There are parts of Afghanistan that have been pretty peaceful, and they can be a model for development, from schools to clean energy, that other parts of the country say, hey, that looks pretty good. Maybe we should do that.
Right.
Instead of fighting each other. So I think that's the approach we need to take.
So I hear you. You're talking about winning the peace as opposed to trying to force a resolution of the war or conquer the Afghan people. So winning the peace is what's key.
I think the Afghanistan papers, They're like the Pentagon Papers that came out the year before I got drafted to go in Vietnam.
Right.
They knew they weren't going to win in Vietnam, but they kept fighting because nobody wanted to be the one that lost the war.
Right.
But it was not their country, and the Vietnamese weren't going to give up. Same thing in Afghanistan. They've known this whole time they're not going to win the war. They're trying to pacify things and support a government that's allied with us. But the Afghanistan people, if anything, don't like foreigners running their affairs. So, you know, we should respect that.
I hear that. Now, I just want to give a big shout out to people making comments in the chat. We have Brother Robert Nisanoff. We have Brother Richard Todd. We have Vicente Montero. We have Sister Jessica on there. And actually, Robert has a question for you. His question is, what's his take on Bernie's campaign, and where does he see people like AOC going in the next few years? I mean, it's not really a question about the Green Party, but I guess what he's trying to dig at is your perspective on what those people are trying to do.
Well, I think they show that when you go into the Democratic Party to change it, it changes you. I think one lesson to draw from Bernie Sanders' 2 presidential campaigns is he should have run independent. He was elected mayor of Burlington as an independent, to Congress as an independent, to the U.S. Senate as independent over many elections. And then when he tried to run as a Democrat, he started to do well, and the corporate establishment in the Democratic Party closed ranks against him.
Right.
And that was very obvious after the South Carolina primary. All the other candidates came out for Joe Biden.
Right.
And so he'd have been better off running independent and still being in the race right now. And he'd had a lot of support.
Right.
But in order to support Joe Biden, he's compromised on a signature issue, Medicare for all. He went on MSNBC a few months ago on Ali Velsh's show and said he's now for Medicare for all in order to support Biden for people 55 and over, which leaves that whole mess of hundreds of private insurance companies and all the paperwork and overhead. That's 1/3 of the healthcare dollar gets spent on that overhead. The whole point of a single public payer is efficiency. So you can put that 30% into healthcare and cover everybody with a top-notch plan. So he backed off there, and AOC, she sat in with the Sunrise Movement at Nancy Pelosi's office, and they called for a select committee on a Green New Deal, and Pelosi wasn't having that. So they came back with a non-binding resolution for a Green New Deal, which took the slogan. That was our signature issue in the last decade for the Green Party. They took the slogan and diluted the content. They eliminated in that non-binding resolution a ban on fracking and new fossil fuel infrastructure, the phase out of nuclear power, the cuts in military spending to help fund the Green New Deal. And they extended the deadline for zero emissions by 20 years, from 2030 to 2050. And even then, Pelosi's never let them vote on it. She calls it the Green Dream or whatever. That's her language. And McConnell in the Senate said, well, half you Democrats are running, you senators are running for president. Let's get you on the record. And Schumer called that a trick and told them to vote president. And all of them voted president except the 4 that voted no with the Republicans against the Green New Deal. And now it's not even mentioned in the Democratic platform or in Biden's climate policy. And if anybody wasn't paying attention, he made that very clear in that presidential debate.
Correct.
So I think the Democratic Party is where progressive demands go to die. They pick up the slogan, but don't follow through with the content.
Right.
So what's the future? I'm afraid that these progressives are getting in there and they are going to settle for being junior partners with the corporate Democrats. And the corporate Democrats will let them make great speeches, which will attract voters. But then when it comes to making decisions, it's the corporate Democrats that's going to be making the decisions.
Yeah. I was listening lately to Jimmy Dore. I'm sure you know Jimmy Dore. And he was talking about, he has this big joke where he says Chuck Schumer, they impersonate Chuck Schumer as like he's pretending to call in. And Chuck Schumer says, I'm going to send Trump a sternly worded letter. And then recently, AOC and some other, quote unquote, progressive Democrats sent a letter to Mitch McConnell and to Chuck Schumer asking that no corporate representatives be accepted as part of Biden's cabinet. And Jimmy Dore, of course, he's a comedian, so he tore that to shreds. And he's saying, listen, those people already, Larry Summers, these banking people, people from Raytheon and the military industrial complex, they're already in the Biden campaign. So I'm sure Jimmy Dore definitely agrees with you and what you're saying in that, because what happens is that, and I've heard people say this, they're talking about infiltrate the Democratic Party. But once they get in there, they themselves fit into the Democratic Party's strategy, which is you keep these progressives or these so-called left people on the bench, and you pull them up when you need them in order to quiet down the people. Ultimately, that's going to be a failed policy, but I definitely see that. So let me go into now, Brother Jose Alfaro in the chat, he has a question. I don't know if you agree with his assessment of this issue, but his question is, what could the Green Party do to attract more people of color? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I think what it seems like behind the question is this idea that there aren't many people of color in the Green Party. Maybe you can clear that up.
Yeah, I think we attract a lot of people on the left who are people of color, Black people, Latinos, indigenous people, Asians. And that's a trope that's thrown at us. We're white tree huggers. But you actually go around to the chapters, and there's a lot of people of color. I mean, my local in Syracuse, there are 2 young women that are leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement. That's their main political work. One of them is run for city council on the Green Line. I'm hoping I get the other one to run next year. We have Mohawk Indians in our local, iron workers, who live here in Syracuse. So, and I can go around the country and talk about other places. So I think the problem, it's not just for the Greens, it's for the whole left. We got to be organizers, not just activists. I mean, we're good at preaching. We can put out the leaflets and make speeches, but the communities that are not participating, like the 100 million people that didn't vote in 2016, disproportionately working class, people of color, and young people. And you come out preaching and they're like, well, who are you? They're totally disgusted with the 2 parties, very cynical about politics. We got to organize. Organizers listen. They go knock on the door, make a phone call, and listen to what people are saying, and build relationships and friendships and trust. And then when it comes to politics, and say, well, what you do is you don't tell people what we're going to do. You ask them, what do you think we should do? Let's talk it through. And you bring people into the process so they feel their power. And we all get smarter when we talk to each other about what we need to do to deal with these problems. And that's an important part of building a movement. We got to be smart. We got to develop ourselves as thinkers and speakers and writers so that we can persuade more people. So I think it's not just the problem with the Green Party, it's the whole left. We got to do what the old left knew how to do, and we kind of threw it out with the new left. I'm a child of the new left. I think we got overly impressed on what we were able to do in civil rights and any environmental questions. But what they could do is organize organizations. And that's what we really need, particularly in this age when we're all online and, rich liberals, billionaires, multimillionaires fund nonprofit groups, but they're oriented to the Democratic Party. And so they steer people that way. And we kind of know what we're supposed to do next because we get a message online through email, Facebook, text message. And we didn't participate in that decision. It's just coming at us from the top down. So that's why I think the key to getting more people of color in these movements, in a Green Party, a mass party to the left, is to become organizers and go out and listen to people. For me, the motto was what I saw the Black Panther Party do in Oakland, California, when I was coming up in the San Francisco Bay Area. First thing, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale went out with the law book and the shotgun, got everybody's attention, following the police. But then the thing that really got people to say, hey, they can get something done, these people are real, is when they went to Salem Elementary School, where kids were getting hit, by cars, and they wanted a stoplight. And the city council wasn't being responsive. So the Panthers went out there and started directing traffic when, kids are coming to school and leaving school. Showed up the police, embarrassed the council, they got their stoplight. And then they had a storefront where people came in, and, it wasn't Bobby Seale and Huey Newton that invented the sickle cell anemia program, or the free breakfast program, or the escorting the seniors from when they cash their Social Security check to the grocery store. It was people came into their storefront and said, we got an issue here. Can you help? And they figured out the answers. So they were listening to the community in order to serve the community. I think that's the model that we need to think about.
Yeah. I mean, we've had, we used to have a group called the People Power Movement, and which then turned into the People-Pueblo Party. And we used to have a lot of discussions and try to do a lot of work around organizing. And what we found was that the organizing work is something that takes a longer period of time, and it becomes more like your life, right? It's not like, oh, I got to go to work, I got to go to school, and then I'm going to go to a march when I'm done. The organizing is more like, I'm really going to deal with folks where I work, where I go to school, where I live, and we're going to find out what the issue is. We're going to work together. We're going to work collectively to solve these problems, kind of like what you were laying out. And I find that that hard work, a lot of groups don't want to do. There's a brother uptown named Domingo in Washington Heights, and he's always saying that, and he's very upfront with people. It's like, hey, if you want respect, you got to be out there with the people, because what he's saying is that often he's out there by himself, and then he only hears from people who are on the left when they want to do a march or a rally through the community, and not be there every day dealing with the everyday situations. There's a pastor, Methodist pastor here in East Harlem, and she does that with her church, with her parish. She's there every day with them and organizing and helping to build a movement there. And so, I definitely support what you're saying. Now, Jose Reyes came on, and he has a very specific question. He would say, his question is, how would you describe this upcoming presidential election? I mean, do you think that this election is going to make a difference at all? Or, I mean, what's your take on this? Because there's so many crises going on at the same time. Does this thing even matter? I mean, what's going on?
Well, I think Trump's, is toast as far as the election goes. I think the polls have shown consistently since the spring, when Biden became the presumptive nominee, he was ahead 4 or 5 points, and by the end of summer, 7, 8 points. Now he's over 10 points ahead nationally, and the battleground states have moved from the upper Midwest to these old Republican strongholds. All indications are, if the vote is counted, and that's Trump's last hope to stop the mail-in count, and the Democrats have an army of lawyers, I think we may need to back them up by going out on the street, which, as we know, in Florida in 2000, Democrats told the people demanding a full count to go home, we got this in the courts. And eventually the Supreme Court gave it to George W. Bush. So I think then that's what we're looking at. And the one thing it'll change is, I think the rhetoric won't be so, openly racist and divisive. But the content, not a big change. I mean, I think on COVID, Biden is not a dummy like Trump has been, and he'll follow the public health advice. And we'll get a better handle on that. But when it comes to a serious climate program, I mean, I can break it down, but I like to say Cuomo calls climate change a hoax, but Biden acts as if it's a hoax. And when it comes to economic security and ending poverty, it's what I was talking about before. Biden's approach is trickle-down economics. He's a senator from Delaware that, for example, got student loans excluded from the ability to go to bankruptcy. and has always represented that industry. That's where the corporations go to charter themselves with the least regulations. That's why Michael Cohen's set up that LLC to pay off Trump's bimbos in the last election. And it's, you know, it's the DuPont state, you know, big chemical industry. So that's who Biden is. And you can keep going through the issues. He's against Medicare for all. He's made that clear. And he said in his last debate with Bernie Sanders, it's irrelevant to the COVID pandemic. Really? I mean, people need treatment, and the cost of COVID treatment is $35,000, $45,000. If you don't get intubated and have a long stay, some of those bills have come in over $1 million.
Yeah.
And, you know, nearly 100 million people don't have any insurance or adequate insurance. In other words, they're underinsured. They can't afford to get sick because the co-pays and the stuff not covered is too great, and the deductibles. So I think we'll end up with Biden, and then we're going to end up with the same problems bearing down on us: economic, environmental. And he's a warmonger. He's been a hawk his whole life. He's the guy that rallied the Democrats to get behind Bush's war in Iraq. Right. And he wants to change tactics. He wants to lower conventional military force footprint in the Middle East, but he wants to ramp up drone strikes and special operations. But he's still fighting those wars. That was his thing in the Obama administration. Obama surged in Afghanistan, and Biden was arguing for more drone strikes, which is eventually where they got to. And then Trump has escalated those. And I don't know, Biden is, you know, that's what he's told us he's going to do. So I think, you know, the election's over, Trump goes, and then we're back where we started from. We got life or death issues, and we need real solutions.
Right. So we're nearing the end of the program. We have about 7 minutes left, and so I want to give you the last word here in terms of why people should be voting for the Green Party. But also, before we go, we always have a short segment on announcements, right? So if there are any events you think people should attend, whether it's virtual or in person, you know, we want to hear about those. So right now, Brother Howie, I'm going to give you some time, and so you can speak to folks who are listening and really let them know why they should be voting for the Green Party.
Okay, well, as far as events go, I plan to be in Nashville, Tennessee when that next debate is, and I'm available to the media. They can have me on the cable news if they want. I'll be right there. I don't expect that, frankly, but I will do a live stream response to the debate when it's over. And you can find out about that on my website, howiehawkins.us. And then we're going to a third parties debate in Cheyenne, Wyoming 2 days later. And that will be on social media. And I'm hitting Tennessee, Colorado, Wyoming, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and then maybe Arizona after I go to Maine tomorrow. So I'm out there campaigning and meeting with Greens. Now, in terms of why people should vote for us, we built our campaign around 3 life or death issues, just as 3 leading issues. The climate meltdown, and that's where the Green New Deal comes in. And as part of our Green New Deal is the Economic Bill of Rights, which deals with this crisis of America. You know, our life expectancies are in decline in a rich country, particularly among working class people. That's inexcusable. So this is a program to end poverty and economic insecurity. And then I outlined before our peace initiatives, because we're in a new nuclear arms race that could, you know, lead to a hot war in any moment. And so that's an issue that ought to be a top campaign issue. The 122 nations agreed to a treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons 3 years ago. And the International Campaign for the Abolition of Nuclear Weapons got the Nobel Peace Prize for that. And hardly anybody in this country knows that, because the corporate state media stenographers won't talk about anything that the 2 corporate parties don't talk about. And they don't talk about it because they're behind this nuclear modernization program, deploying these new strategic and tactical nuclear weapons. So why should you vote for us? Because we think we have real solutions to these life or death issues. And it's better to vote for what you want and maybe not get your person in office, but at least you tell the public and the people in the media where you stand. If you vote for Biden and you want Medicare for all and a Green New Deal and an end to these endless wars, you just got lost in the sauce. You don't know that he doesn't know that's what you stand for. If you vote for the Greens, then they can't take us for granted. And if they can't take us for granted, they got to listen to us. So it gives us more leverage in the politics going forward. So don't waste your vote on what you don't want. Vote for what you want and make politicians come to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, brother, for that. And I hope you come back. We had some technical difficulties with Bill's mic. His sound, I think you heard it was kind of breaking up. But you know what? I think we're just going to get him a nice headset and with a mic. And so next time, I don't think we're going to have that problem. But thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And we also, through Sister Betty and Brother Ralph here in New York City, are, at least having discussions with some Green Party folks around collaborating more. Because as the multiple crises get worse, it's going to push all of us who really care about the people, who really care about the environment, who really care about animals and life on this planet. It's going to push us to collaborate more and more. And, it's horrible what's happening, but it really is going to get us to start looking at what's really important in our organizing work and how we really do need to change this whole system. So I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to us talking again. I mean, you got a very hectic schedule, brother, let me tell you. But it's like you said, that's what we do when we organize, right? We got to be with the people.
And it doesn't stop on November 3rd. I mean, we'll keep going. I'd love to come back on the show and talk some more and get down to New York City and see you in person.
All right, brother. All right. So as we do and always closing our program, we exhort people to organize wherever they are, whether it's school, work, in their community. Start organizing with your friends and family. And we always end out by saying, all power to the people.
All right.
All right. Peace.